Drift Island, the Iron Drift King podcast, hosted by Marcel Uhlig and Jacob Gettins.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Iron Drift King podcast. My name is Jacob Gettins, and this episode, like all the other episodes, is brought to you by Parts 33. If you are looking for parts online, this is the place to go. Amazing shipping, insane selection. I might just move to Europe just so I can start dealing with Parts 33 more often. Today, we have a very, very special guest. It's not just Marcel, but we have Mr. Dave Egan on. Dave, what's going on? How was Finland?
Finland was, as usual, chaos from start to finish, but and pardon the pun, but it's one of those events where I think it's like the fans are so amped up there. This year is different for us because we had a lot of stuff going on. We were revealing our Liberty Walk RX-7 with Liberty Walk themselves, which was exciting. We were obviously running the media behind the scenes at Drift Masters. I was announcing, and we had two cars in the competition. So between everything, there was a bunch of us there running around trying to keep everything moving. But all in all, a very, very good fun weekend and smiles on faces, which is the whole point of why we do what we do. And I think we did pretty well. We nearly got that top 8 in the competition with Connor Falvey. We were very close to it. And we also had a great time at Liberty Walk, who had never been to a Drift Masters event. So for them, going from watching D1 and supporting D1 to coming to their first European Drift event, to get their reaction to how crazy it was there was also really nice because it's such an outside perspective from them. And they loved it. They thought it was insane. They thought the driving was insane. And they really enjoyed it from start to finish. They actually planned to just come do the car reveal and, hang out. But they actually watched every single run of the competition. So they were super pumped up on everything. And it also was really good because there was a lot of different personalities from different parts of the world and drifting at that event in a theme park in the middle of nowhere in Finland. So everybody got time to talk and conversate because there's nothing else to do but be at the track. So we had a great time as usual. Partied hard at the end of it as well. So we're all back to business this week, trying to, get back to normality after what was a very exciting weekend. So we loved it. It's always, last year it was such a surprise on the calendar of how good that event was because it was the first time for Drift Masters. But this year we knew what to expect. And sometimes it's nicer to know what to expect because you can really, feed into the atmosphere, especially when I was announcing. I mean, it's probably the easiest audience in the world.
Yeah,
like you could go out there and just say,
100%, yeah.
You could go out there and say bananas, and they would just scream bananas because they just want to be part of the shows. And they support every driver. Obviously, the Finnish guys get the biggest cheer, but they support everybody. They support the sport. And what's amazing is the Finland fans come to every round of Drift Masters, hundreds of them. So they are such a lifeblood of, I think, inspiring other nations to be more patriotic when it comes to supporting their drivers. And it's fed into, the face paint and the wigs and all the football stuff, which is something that I don't think we've ever seen in drifting before. So they've definitely excited the European fans, and I think made a lot of other European countries now step up and say, hey, they're not going to take all the glory here. We're going to come with a big crew of people as well to support. So it's been very fun to watch that progression. But it's special in Finland when, of course, Lauri Heinen wins. You got the fairy tale story. If it was a WWE WrestleMania, that's the script you would have written, but drifting, it never works out that way. And it just on that day it did. So between all the rain and the crashes, all the cars were destroyed. A lot of fixing to do. It's only round 3 and it looks like they've done 3 seasons. So it's been an exciting year and we've been enjoying it. So it's been a chill time and Finland is one of my highlights.
Yeah, it was definitely I would say probably one of the peaks of Drift Masters in at least the last couple of years, like how everything came together. I mean, it's easy to point at like Poland or final rounds or Mondello, where it's like, oh, here's, the Irish favorite that's going to do it. But to see something like what we saw there, where you had big names kind of going out early, we saw crazy breakdowns. We saw drivers who, should be in the lead of the championship, not even qualifying. Like the whole thing was just chaos. And like every time you thought you knew what was about to happen, something else would happen. You're like, oh, never mind. Like there goes everything that was supposed to happen. And then obviously,
what it's like, Jacob, as an announcer, you love a bit of drama. You love a bit of upset. You love a bit of unpredictability because it gives you something to get excited about way before the finals, way before that. You've got you want it to be, and I think it's been a really good year for drifting in general when it comes to unpredictability, because years ago there was a lot of dominant characters that would just, top 3 would be very predictable. You know exactly what's going to happen before you get there. And I think that's that's due to the depth of talent across the world now. So it used to be, 5 guys in a region would dominate, but now you look at 30, 40 guys at an event and you start to think maybe anyone could win it here. And I think you look at, especially last year, this year, how many different winners of events we're seeing at top level, which is great inspiration for everybody climbing the ranks, because they now look at it and go, I could be the next star because this guy, I didn't even know who this guy was a year ago, and now he's the championship leader. So I think there's great inspiration in that. And to see sort of the guys you expect to win go up against the guys that are rising through the ranks, that's the great thing about sport, and you see it in every sport. You get new names, new heroes, and new stories. And to me, I'm very story driven in how I look at motorsport. I like a good story. And I think if you look at, say, Formula One at the moment with the domination of Max Verstappen, you can get to a point where you're not as interested because it's a similar story. Now in drifting, you're seeing this. I have to sit here and watch the whole thing because I don't know what way the story is going to play out. So I love that. And from being in the sport for so long, it's nice that it's not getting more predictable. It's actually getting more unpredictable. And even for people who watch so much of it like we have, you can still get so excited and so interested in it. So it's a really good place for drifting right now all across the world. And I think that's my favorite part of it, is that it's becoming easier to announce because you have got drama from the off.
You don't need to make it up, right? It's just easy to talk something.
You don't have to create it.
You're excited, genuinely excited about it, and it's so easy to just share that if you're that person, right? And obviously, both of you are. So it's a very very simple job in that moment. I was
I mean, all you're looking for is something to talk about, and they're giving it to us every day. So it's great.
I was just wondering when you said that, we have so many new winners, so many guys that just 12 months ago haven't been at all in the top 10 level, and now they are. How are the top guys dealing with that now? Because a lot of the top guys actually, now it has always been difficult, but they somehow had this kind of, 50% of the weekend is basically in my bag before I even start, because my routine is good, my muscle memory is good, my team is good. So I just know what I'm doing. But right now it seems like you have to be on your absolute A game from the first second on until the last, right? It's very, very tricky now.
I think it's a good thing, because if you look at a lot of the names, I think you can look at this from Formula Drift or Drift Masters or anywhere, that, a lot of these guys who have won, I mean, all they've left to do is win again. But I think what they're finding enjoyable about it is that the level is increasing. So when they win now, it means a lot more than when they won 5 or 10 years ago, because I spoke to Jack Shanahan about this, because we have a driver on our team, Colin Falvey, who's 16. And Jack Shanahan was saying he finished in the top 5 his first season of drifting in Europe, 10 years ago. But then he was like, but who was I beating? He's like, these guys, the quality, there wasn't 40, 50 guys that could link the track in qualifying that could put on a good battle. So a lot of those guys now, and I even spoke to James Dean after the event, he was saying, it's so much harder to win now than it was 5 or 10 years ago. That when you win, you've actually done more than you did to win 5 or 10 years ago. So you're getting better as a driver. So they're feeling progression, where if it was the same kind of challenge and it was an easy win for anybody at this stage, they might get bored of it, or they might get to a point where, I don't know, it becomes routine. It becomes that. And now they're fighting. And I think, as James Dean said, his win at Long Beach this year compared to his first win at Long Beach, what was that, 5 years ago or 6 years ago? Or whatever it was. He was saying was so much more emotional for him because of how hard it is to win now compared to back then. Not that it was easy back then, but it certainly wasn't. Like, he basically said, you could do good runs, not make mistakes, and win an event. Now you've got to be exceptional to win an event and do crazy stuff, which makes it so much more rewarding when it pays off. But it also means it has the other side of it, where guys who are used to winning and now are getting beaten by guys that they've only just heard their name, on the sheet that came out that morning. And now they're feeling like everybody is sort of a threat. And I think that gets the quality of competition from the off to the end now so much more. I remember the days where if somebody was close in a battle, you were like, oh, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And now if someone's, one car length away, we're like, oh, this is a terrible run. He's nowhere, no proximity. So we're also harsher as fans now to know what we want to see. But the fact that these guys can deliver it all the time from 32 to the final means that you can now sit down, watch a show, and you're entertained from start to the finish. You're not like on your phone waiting for it to get good. Now it's good from the off. And I think that's, for the guys that are in the sport a very long time, new challenge I mean, these are competitors at the end of the day. They want to be the best. And I think they're realizing that now is maybe the best time of quality and talent in drifting. So winning now might mean the same as 2 trophies 10 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
I think one of the coolest trickle downs from that too is that we now have to pay much more attention to other series, lower series, different series, because we're especially for me, like I'm hunting for who do I need to watch now that I'm going to be talking about in 3 years time. So whereas before you're just kind of watching pro and you would watch somebody, okay, bottom level, bottom 32. Okay, they're doing well, and that's the person I'm going to watch. Now I'm finding myself going into feeder series and grassroots levels, and I'm talking to people going like, hey, who's the local grassroots champion right now? Who's like the local guy that's blowing up? Because the speed that those drivers then accelerate into the top levels is like 3 years. You could be the best local guy and then be in pro in 3 years now if you are that good. So that's how we have to do it. While Finland was going on, I was at Gutbill and like I was asking around like, hey, who's somebody I've never heard of that I should be watching? And they'd be pointing people out. I'm like, I think all three of us can see it where there's certain things somebody does in a car where that they're going to be good, the way that they drive with confidence, the lack of corrections, the amount of commitment in certain situations. And you're like, oh, you've got all the building blocks now to be incredible. You just need time. You just need to hone that blade a little bit more. So that is what I think is amazing. I mean, you talk about Laurie Heinen, like a couple of years ago, most people wouldn't know who that driver was. And now you're like, now you have to pay attention.
And again, he's a threat. And I think we spoke about it at the weekend, and not to go back too much on my team, but Connor Falvey, who's 16. I mean, he beat Kuba Pushkonsky in the top 32. And Kuba won his first trophy before Connor was born.
So he's a professional race driver.
When you look at 3 years ago, Connor Falvey never stepped in a drift car. And then now he's out there, up against, huge names on the grid. And he's a threat as well. Not that he's there or the finished product or anything like that, but it goes to show that talent can rise very quickly now. 2, 3 years, 4 years, especially if you're young and you're sponging in all that experience, you've maybe got a lack of fear. You don't actually have all the adult consequences of what a lot of this means, as in, letting people down isn't as big a deal. Financially, it's probably, it's not as big a deal. So these guys are a threat going forward. And you can see that from James Dean coming through, very, very young driver, and then Connor Shanahan, Jack Shanahan, Dwayne. Now this next level, I'm not just focusing on the Irish, but you can also look at it from the Zalewskis from Poland. You can look at it from all these different sides. And these guys are coming through and they've been watching and learning very quickly off their peers, and then being able to go out there with the same machinery and do the job. So very exciting time, because now we're sitting here going, we might not know in 3 years' time if this random guy we've never heard of is now the best driver in Europe. And that's a total possibility. Whereas if you look at motorsport like Formula One, it's a 10 or 15 year run before you get to, or 10-year run before you get to Formula One. You're brought through all these different ranking systems. Here, you can move very fast to the top level of the sport. So is it Manawa in Formula Drift?
Yeah.
Is what, like 15? This is a kid. It's a child. A child comes in a 1,000 horsepower car and can beat some guys that have been drifting for 10 or 15 years. And I don't know, as a fan, is there anything more exciting than those prospects, of those matchups and those battles? So it's a very exciting time to be involved in drifting, because it's not like we have, and I'm not ever going to down on D1, but there are a lot of drivers that are there for 30 years, they're 40, 50 years of age. It seems like it's the opposite now in Europe and America, where it's the young guy coming through that's feeding all the energy, learning from 10 years or 15 years of experience from a previous driver and going, I could do that in a year because I've learned by watching them what worked and what didn't. So it's really exciting. I love it. And I think for me, it's especially as I'm a fan before I do anything else in drifting. I love watching just a story play out. The young kid coming through against the veteran, or the veteran just pushing him back down saying, hey, not yet, buddy. All that stuff to me is makes it fascinating. And as I always said, nobody ever cares about a sport in terms of what it actually is. You're not going to go, hey, are you watching the football at the weekend? You're always going to ask who's playing. And that's where we're seeing these personalities come true in drifting. It's not the drifting you're watching. You're watching who's drifting and who's beating who and who's winning. And I think years ago, it was very much just about the drifting. I'm going to watch the drifting or the drift competition. Yeah. Now, with the social media presence all these guys have, you're watching star versus star. And that's why I think it's bringing so many more people there.
It's a very good way of putting it. I actually haven't thought of it in that regard. That like, yeah, I don't. When I refer to hockey, I don't talk like I'm going to watch the hockey game tonight. I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch the Leafs play, and it's very very specific as to who I'm watching, why I'm watching them, and there's always a story like, oh, you know, and same thing in Canada, we talk about hockey constantly. And I live in an area where it's split between kind of 3 different teams. So whenever you know, even if you say, oh, I'm going to watch the game tonight, first question, who's your team? And then it's like, oh, I'm a Leafs fan. Like, you know, we're in Detroit. You should be a Detroit fan. Like it's interesting.
Well, I think we're now seeing that change. I mean, the first 10 years of drifting or 15 years, driving a car sideways with smoke coming out of the tires was entertaining enough because it was a new sport. People had a new look at it. They're like, this is cool. After a while, you've seen enough videos of drifting. You've seen enough competition to go, I know what drifting is. I know I like nothing is going to impress you. Now your emotional involvement comes from the story of that driver. And then when all these drivers start to vlog, create their own personality, their own journey and their own story now, and remember, they did this independently, not through television or, you know, big sponsorships or like, you know, being broadcast. They did it themselves, which gave them a real, I don't know, if you follow a driver, you live through their eyes and now you're invested in them and you want to see how they do at the event. And then if you do that across every driver on the grid, you're very invested in what's happening. And I think now one thing that I've always said, a difference between maybe Formula Drift and Drift Masters is you're seeing this national element in Drift Masters where, you know, my country is now being represented. So instead of supporting one driver, I'll support the 4 drivers from my country. So now you've got your favorite driver, you want to watch the drifting, and now you're invested as a nation in who wins from your side. So that's all building towards more passionate fans, more investment of who wins. And also you see the other side of it, which is more controversy, right? Because more people are passionately wanting something to happen. If a judging decision doesn't go their way, they're furious about it. And I always look at that going, man, the fact that people even care enough to be furious about drifting is amazing for drifting. Because years ago, they'd be like, oh, they just turn it off and go, that was cool, whatever. But now they really want that driver to win, or they really want this to happen. And they're very invested. So I think that's great news for drifting. And we're only seeing it grow across all platforms at the moment. And yeah, it's a buzz. I think for me, you know, you jump into this as a career 10 years ago, and you're not sure if it's going to last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. To think 10 years later, we've got like thousands of people around a podium, Finnish fans screaming national anthem. There's 56,000 in a stadium, 14-year-olds in Formula Drift. This is just nuts. So I'm like, this is brilliant for everybody who's a fan. They're getting their money's worth. They're getting their investment paid off with the amount of action we're seeing in drama. So it's great.
Yeah, I think if you were to ask any of us 10 years ago, like if you were to present what we're doing right now, the situation we're in right now, to us 10 years ago, be like, yeah, okay. Like, yeah, whatever. There's no way. And it's, yeah, I wouldn't have believed me. That's for sure.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, because I've run series, Marcel's run series, you know, Ryan, Sage, and guys from, if you sat down with a business plan and put all of this on it, you'd just be laughed out of the room to say, this is where we'll be. We're going to have 1,000 horsepower cars. They're going to go through tires in 2 runs. We're going to have, you know, everyone's going to have a sequential gearbox. Everybody's going to have a quick change. We're going to go running 8 walls around run. We're going to have it door to door right from the 32. There's going to be 23 countries represented. Like, this is nuts. So I think it's a really nice surprise and maybe a nice reward for the people that were so passionate about it 10 years ago or 20 years ago to see it come this far, because it's really paid off, I think, for those people that maybe believed in it when it had gone through its dips and it's gone through its moments where it didn't look like it was fizzling out. Drifting was fizzling out. And now I think it's stronger than it's ever been. I think we are in the glory years, as people always talk about, of drifting. This surely has to be it, because this is stuff no one could imagine.
I think we all, when I was still driving, I finished driving 2017. I don't know how often I was promised next year is the year. Next year is the year you get paid for what you're doing. You know, no starting fees, no, you know, everything will be better. Everything that made it difficult as a team and as a driver was promised to be better, and it never happened, right? And it's still promised. But I also feel, same as you, if it doesn't happen now, it will never. I don't know. I mean, for sure, we will still progress, right? That's the fun thing about drifting. I don't think in terms of future. I'm just in it. I'm going to ride that wave. I'm going to give my absolute best to do something great for the sport. And I don't even know where the finish line is. I hope there's never any. I hope there is no finish line, right?
Yeah. I think that's the whole problem with everything in drifting is there's no point anymore of talking about the end goal. because the end goal also signals the end.
Yeah.
So,
Scary.
for example,
Scary.
we're all on a journey. Well, yeah, scary. Yeah. So we're all on a journey. How long that journey lasts, we don't know. But everybody's putting their all into it. And every year I can see a progression, an improvement and everybody's trying to improve. The drivers, the organizers, the presentation, everybody is trying to make it better. And if everyone just tries to do that, that's going to get it there at some point. And where there is, maybe we are there. We'll never know. But to be honest, I think last year when we did the PGA Narodowe Stadium in Poland, I saw a lot of the old guys, like the OGs that don't drift anymore. Mm-hmm. They were in tears at that event because they never thought this could get to that, you know, or those levels. Or even if you look at, I'm sure the figures that Formula Drift put into streams or into social media, like this is unheard of for an independent sport to be doing this with such a vast audience. So I never really think about, I mean, I never have time, so I'm just thinking about 6 months ahead all the time. But I think that's the key. It's just keep moving, keep progressing, keep doing new things, new challenges, shake it up a little bit. Sometimes you'll make good decisions, sometimes you'll make bad decisions, but eventually all those decisions will keep it moving. And yeah, I think it's exciting. And I don't think, you know, I think we've always worried about, well, it's all going to fall apart and it's at its peak, it's on the down. It never has happened. So I think it's my favorite phrase is always, it's not a problem until it's a problem. So I was like, let's just keep going while we have, you know, the enthusiasm of our fans to do it. And yeah, I'm pumped. I'm pumped every year on drifting, which again, after 10 years, you would imagine I would be like, oh, let's just go through the motions again. But every year I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be great or whatever. So if I watched every single run of Drift Masters for 6 years now, every single run, and I still can't wait for the next one, I'm pretty sure the fans are pumped on it too.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is it involves people, right? And if the core values in our life and the core principles come back to how people behave, how people feel, how people interact with you, and those drivers are people, those teams are people, and I think this is why it never gets boring. Because people are unpredictable, you know. That's that unpredictability is, I think, something that excites us because we never know what's really going to happen. You know, we all have an idea,
but also, I mean, you need to be a character, right? Because there's no way a logical, sane person goes drifting. No one's ever even the best guy is not really making a whole lot of money out of it. He's actually just spending more to be the best guy. This is my path, you know. So I think there's a level of passion outweighing logic, which is fun because when everybody feels like that, I always say normal people would look at drifting and go, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But when you put a bunch of those people together, it justifies it, but it also becomes a strong friendship because everybody who's involved in drifting, whether you're a judge, announcer, Starline Marshal, driver, everybody knows it's almost like a level of thanklessness in terms of financial reward, but in terms of achievement, and with your friends and your team and feeling like you're pushing the sport forward, there's a huge amount of self-worth in that and I would say payoff that isn't equatable to money in a way. So it's very hard to explain it. But when you feel it, you feel it. When you feel like you've done a great event and everyone's buzzed on it, every driver, you know, organizer, even the cameraman is feeling like we did this together, we created this and we're part of this team. And I think that's where drifting, because it's so independent, because money in many ways can ruin things too. You know, when it all becomes about money, people can stop being friends. It can become a lot more cutthroat. I think we're at a balance now where I don't know where we're all getting the money to do it, but we're all surviving. And also at the same time, just enough. But it's a case of that we're not in massive competition with each other. Everybody's trying to push everyone on because it benefits us all when anyone rises up the totem pole.
Yeah, I think this conversation as a whole is a great example of that. I mean, other sports like Dave, you and I would never talk. It would be like, no, that's my competition. He's in a different series than me. We do the same job. We're different. Even Marcel and yourself, like, oh, we run different events. Like, there's no way we're going to talk to each other. Whereas in drifting, it's like, no, we've all worked together. We're all from very different places. We're all in different series and events. And it's like, you know, we're all friends at the end of the day. Dave, you and I have worked together.
I think the only competition in drifting is from the start line to the finish line on a run. That's about it.
That's it.
Everything outside of that, I think you can see it from any sport. There's lots of inner competition. We don't talk to them. We don't mix with them. But when it comes to drifting, I think everybody's pretty open. And especially from an organizational point of view, and I've always said, I'm not in competition with anybody. Like people would say, Drift Master is better than FD, or FD is better than Drift Masters, or I'm Drift King, or this or that. I'm like, none of the people actually running any of these are in competition with anybody.
No.
They're just trying to do the best thing they can with what they've given and what their circumstances in front of them. Like at no point do I ever do a Drift Masters event and go, take that, FD. Like no one, like, I've never even thought about it. I want, as a real true drift fan, everybody to do well. Every driver, every team, every series.
That's ideal,
because it grows the sport as a whole.
Yeah.
And if you can collaborate with everybody along the way, you're going to have better events and bigger events and more things. I mean, it's such a small, in the scheme of things, such a small pie that you don't want to slice it up too much because it becomes, not enough to fill anybody. So I think what you want to do is push together, collaborate. And I've always tried to do that with my career, is that I've collaborated with, back in the day, Drift All-Stars, or I've done partnerships with Formula Drift. I've worked with Drift Masters. I've worked with everybody in every circumstance, because even the grassroots stuff in Ireland, I've competed in it, I've supported it, and I support everything, because drifting always feeds itself from somewhere else. So it's a good thing to be a part of the pillar. You're more of a pillar than you are a singular structure. So I get on with everybody in drifting. I think we're all, and I actually get on with organizers probably more than anybody, because we're the true ones that can stand around with a beer going, this is a really difficult job, and these are the hassles and stresses I have. And a driver will probably relate with a driver more than they will an organizer. Or a judge from one series will certainly talk to a judge from another series and go, oh man, like, did you ever have this problem or that problem? So it's almost like a codependent therapy as opposed to competition, I think.
Yeah. I think we've done a really good job so far kind of getting into who Dave is, both as a presenter and as an organizer. But the real reason we're here is to talk about Dave the driver, which is something you gloss over quite often, which I think is kind of funny, because not that you're like a multiple time world champion, but it's not like you're a slouch behind the wheel. You obviously know how to drive. And the big part coming out of this is that you're going to be driving at Iron Drift King, which is sick. As soon as I heard that, I was immediately very giddy, because I'm like, oh, I get to call Dave now. Like, for me, kind of selfishly, I was oh, I get to critique him, like, after all this time.
I know. It's funny, and it very much the reason I haven't driven as much as I'd like to is my responsibility in other roles of running events or announcing events. And I think there was a level of I always have that split, because I go, am I better for the event as a participant, or am I better for the event as a salesman in terms of announcing and, organizing? So it's always been a mix. So what I've always found is that I've always struggled, because I like to think my events can be quite good at times, but I never can compete in my own events. And then it was always, so I've been competing for over 10 years, I think, but I've always done it as more of I would say a part-time hobby than I have as really focusing on trying to win anything specific. Because what generally happened is I would get a car, I want to do this full competition, this full season, boom, 3 of the dates clash with something else I'm doing. And now all of a sudden I can only dip in and dip out to those events. We were just joking about the other day, saying the last 7 competitions I've done them in 7 different cars. Because it's been in Australia or Japan, I've driven different cars. And a lot of that stuff was driving for content's sake, or driving for novelty's sake, or driving for just to have some fun and not take it too seriously. But I think as time has gone on, especially this year with a lot of things changing out of our hands, I would say I started to look at the driving side, saying it's probably the last challenge I have in drifting that intrigues me, because I've done everything in drifting, from make the videos, do the photos, Starline Marshal, judging, announcing, running events, all the way from 2 people and a dog watching them up to 60,000 people. And the driving part is my most passionate part. But a lot of the time I don't have the means, or the justification to do it financially or whatever it may be. But then things have changed over the last year or so, where I felt, if I'm going to do this, I've got to do it at some point. I've got to take a step towards that side. And I drove at the end of last year, I drove the Irish Drift Championship final, which is like a mix of the best Drift Masters drivers from Ireland and the Irish guys. And it was the first time that year I'd driven competitively in my Corvette. I've driven all year. And I qualified with a 90. I won my 32, won my 16, and I lost to James Dean in the top 8. And I was like, that's a really good weekend of drifting. And I gave James an okay go, but it's James at the end of the day. And I remember chasing James going, I'm not sitting here going, like, oh, I need to change this suspension setting, or I was on the same setup from the start of practice to the end because I was just doing it for fun. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should have like done this or done that or changed things. I'm taking it a little bit more seriously. And then obviously the fire came along, and then I drove James's Eurofighter at the first round of the Irish Drift Championship. And it changed my perspective a lot on pro drifting, because the first lap I did when I drove the car, I went, why the hell would I bother coming to compete against this thing? Like, this thing is so much more capable than my car, and he is 20 times better than me. So I'm like, it's fun to go drifting, but at a pro level, I think this is my point anyway. If you can't win a pro because you don't have the machinery, and you also can't do grassroots because your machinery is too high, you get stuck in the middle where I was, like going, I'm spending a lot of money to not win the event, but also too much money to just do it for fun. So I was stuck in that kind of middle ground. And I think after the fire, I was like, I think I should probably just get a car that's good enough to win the event, any event. And the problem is me, the squishy bit in the middle of the car. But that's the cheapest thing to make better. The car is the expensive part, but the cheap part is just growing as experience and learning. And it was a total random, funnily enough, not that many people know, but I was speaking with James Dean about the car that he's currently giving away in Ireland at the moment. There was a conversation there about maybe getting that pro car. And I kind of was toing and froing. And then I went to Spain. And then just across from our tent in the paddock was that Supra, just sitting there, completely finished. And I was like, I remember how much hassle it was to build a car like that. And this one is just ready to go. And we spoke with DBM. They wanted to promote their company and their builds. We obviously are good at promoting, probably bad at building. So we were like, this could work both ways. And it was a beautiful car. It had all the spice from the 3 cars I'd lost in the fire. I had the 2J from the Lambo. I drove an A90 Supra on the street. And I also had a HGK carbon fiber car with a sequential and a Winters and stuff. So it was like the 3 cars all became one like transformer into one car in the middle. We did a deal and we had a long conversation about it. And they've been super helpful, DBM, to support what I'm doing going forward, to help us with advice. And, you know, we're learning technically about the pro side of it. I mean, so yeah. And then I went, all right, where are we going to drive this car? And then I said, it's such a crazy car. And because it costs so much money and it's so pretty and all this stuff, I was like, I need to go somewhere probably high competition, terrifying, and likelihood that I'm going to hit something, so I can wipe all of that nervousness away with the car. And it becomes, rather than a showpiece, it becomes a tool, you know, like to go drifting. So then obviously I've been to Iron Drift King for the last 3 years. I know the venue. I know how cool it looks. It's such a good spectacle, and it's dangerous and it's high energy. And I was like, well, if I go and do that event, that's probably as like, you're going to get thrown into the flames there as much as you're ever going to do in a car. That's the place to go. Because if I come out of Iron Drift King with one wheel left on the car, I'm not going to be afraid of any other event that I go to after that. That car is now just for winning events. So that's why I felt that was the perfect, let's say, launch pad for the car. And also, I have 1,000 horsepower now, and a lot of the national series in Ireland, that would be like, you know, bringing a gun to a spoon fight a little bit. So I was like, at least there, the competition level is very high. The driving is very high. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of great drivers who I can learn from and be sure that I can push hard with in the car and have similar level or similar specifications. So to me, it just sort of all the stars aligned. I reached out to Marcel. He said he'd love to have me there to compete. And I was like, right, let's put it on the calendar. Let's go get some testing done over the next few weeks. Let's get the car set up the way I want it to. I've done probably 8-9 laps in the car at this point, so I need to do a lot more than that before I go into the concrete jungle that is there. But I also feel quietly confident in my ability. I've done pretty well at every competition I've been in before. I've always qualified pretty high. I think I've got an ability to drive, especially qualifying, or not qualifying, but in lead run positions. I'm pretty steady and consistent. So, yeah, I'm excited. And my team, like, again, we're still learning how the car even turns on, works, everything. So we're messaging DBM every week, figuring it out. But I thought it would be a good adventure. Bunch of boys in the van, head to Germany, go there, see what happens. I love the new format style that the guys are running, because I know I'm guaranteed 2 battles when I go there. So it's, you know, from a experience point of view, I know I'm going to have 2 battles to learn, rather than you go there, you have a qualifying issue or you break down and then it's all for nothing. So that to me felt like a perfect launch pad for the car. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting spot to decide to debut it. It's like, oh, let's go somewhere with zero runoff and just concrete everywhere and high speed entry. Like it's definitely a bold move, that's for sure. It wouldn't have been my decision. I would have been like,
let's have a podcast. Let's have a podcast afterwards when I say this was a terrible idea. The car is in half. I have no car now. I'm back to back to grassroots. No, I think. Look, I've always been, in my opinion, I've never competed in an event. I wouldn't say never, but I've never really competed in an event with so much spectacle that I want to be part of it on the grid. I've always been on the announcing side of the spectacle, and now I want to be on the grid when that spectacle is happening because it's just something I want to experience from the other side. And that means I've got to get much better at driving. I've got to learn my car, and I've got to be competitive. And I've got a couple of weeks to do it. But again, good challenge. I'm looking forward to it.
It's wild. I mean, like I said, it's definitely wild. I agree wholeheartedly on the driver level, the spectacle level, the right car for the right job. Like, I mean, there's obviously some thought that was put into this decision. It seems, as of right now, knock on wood, like the correct call. I do very much want to get your thoughts and opinions afterwards because I'm curious what the car is going to look like. I mean, we've seen so many cars.
Yeah, and I'm ringing Chris Stapps from HGK saying, no, I'm going to need all of it, the whole car again, just the whole outer shell. But to me, that's, you buy these drift cars and it's part of it. I mean, you accept it when you buy them. It doesn't matter how pretty they are, how capable they are. What am I going to do with that car? Just sit it, do donuts? Like it's too capable for it just to sit and do nothing. So the car is designed to take a hit. It's designed to, replace parts, replace suspension, replace body panels. I've done enough crashing over my 10 years to know there's we always say it's really funny when you're putting a livery on a drift car and there's a small bubble in one of the stickers and you're like, oh no, and you're trying to weave it out. 2 weeks later, the whole side of the car is gone. So it's almost insane. But I think now I'm like, right, I'm even designing a livery that's independent of every panel at the moment so that if I hit something, I can just get another bumper and put the sticker back on.
That's a really interesting thought. I think not many people actually had that idea. That's great.
Yeah.
No, I was like, can I get a panel from HCK, put the stickers on it, put the livery on it, and match it up so the panels don't all have to be, one big wrap. And I watched enough, in 10 years, I watched enough guys go in the wall to realize that I wouldn't be surprised if it was me because I've watched a lot better than me go in the wall. So I think it's part and parcel of the game, but that's the excitement that I want from drifting. It's the on edge I want from drifting. And again, if you go there for battle and you do well and it succeed and it's a dangerous track, you get such a high of even just completing a lap as opposed to just winning a battle.
I think that's, as a driver, that's the biggest thing. The fear being rewarded with the pride and joy after you made it through is it's absolutely crazy. I'm honest. And I think I would never drive my own track. I would never do it. I'm too scared. I would shit my pants. But
I think for me, I learned at the weekend that these Supras and GT86s have such small overhang on the back.
Oh yeah, we have seen that.
They're even more risky. Yeah. They're even more risky than the E92s or the S14s or 15s or the Corvettes. So for me, I'm like, oh, now I've got to be especially in the Supra, you sit so far back in the car, you're almost on the rear wheels. So you're pretty close to that wall if anything goes wrong. So I think I'm enjoying knowing the car is capable because the guy's built an amazing car. I now just need to be capable myself and a little bit of training, a little bit of adaptation from me. Luckily, we have access to Mondello Park in Ireland, so we can test, we can go through different setups and get comfy in the car so that my first lap in Iron Drift King isn't just what's going to happen next. So I think, I'm going to be ready as best I can, do some sim work, which I haven't done in a while, and get to a point where I feel like I'm comfortable that I can go there. But challenge is all I want in drifting at the moment. I think the easy stuff was, I've done all that years ago. Now it's put myself in a really uncomfortable position and see if I can, dig my way up, as they say, out of it. And then if it comes off, then it's such a good feeling. And it's such a good reward for how much risk you're putting in.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm really interested to see even just the moments that you get there, how your mind shifted or how your mind is going to have to shift to go from everything else that you're doing back into the driver's state while also obviously observing. I mean, Iron Drift King is going to be doing a lot of things differently than any other drifting event we've seen. So that's the part where I feel like I'm going to be checking in with you over the whole weekend to be like, okay, from this part of you, from the event organizer, what do you think of this thing? And then from the driver's side of you, what do you think of this part? And then, from the announcer side, like that's the unique thing with having you come in. It's almost like having a world-class reviewer come into your restaurant who is also a chef and a sommelier and a server and be like, okay, what do you think of this insanely different restaurant that was just developed? Because that's kind of the situation that we're coming into with all the changes and all the differences.
Well,
that are happening.
I have to commend Marcel on this, because I think if I had a standalone event, and I had standalone events in the past, like let's say the LZ World Tour, for example, you can try things a little differently, because it's not like you're not investing in 6 events that have to follow the same format in a year. So you can go and push the boundaries a little bit, and it creates, a question mark over the conventional way. As I've always said to people, do we do this because we've always done it or because it's the best way? And that's sometimes hard to know in drifting. And I think what's really nice about an event like this is that, without a major consequence in terms of, 6 rounds where you have to stick to a format, or 6 rounds where it might work in some venues, but not really well in other venues. There's certain areas that can work and not work. I think it's nice to see someone trying something new. And if it works, people will take that, and it's like a gift to the rest of drifting. If it doesn't work, no harm done. I mean, I did, in IDC at one point, I had a 1 more run instead of a 1 more time, where every car had to do 3 runs, 3 runs on 1 set of tires. Then it would be the higher qualifier to lead. And we experimented with it. In the end, it was like, I don't know, it wasn't as exciting because we didn't get to see a chase. But I remember at the end of the year saying, well, 50% of the leads won 50% of the chases. So it kind of was fairly like even. But after the end of the year, I went, I just don't like it anymore. But it was nice to try it, because we were like, well, why not? If everyone buys in, we can try something new. So I think with FD this year moving to the new format, I think that's worked really well for them. Drift Masters have tried to do the qualifying showdown, so something different again. And I think everybody's watching what everybody's doing, going, we'll all take a chance here. And then at the end of the year, we'll all come back and go, what worked and what didn't. And I think that's also nice, because, I mean, if you look at Formula One, they introduced the Q1, Q2, Q3. This became a whole new format that now it's very hard to imagine that not being in Formula One, but that's only a couple of years old, and it was just a general qualification before that. So I think we're always learning and trying. And I think at Iron Drift King, I'm really excited to see from a driver's perspective, because often as an organizer, it works for you as an organizer, the amount of practice, the amount of time, all this different stuff, the scheduling, but does it work from the other side? And I think a lot of the times that I've competed has been to not be theoretical about what I'm organizing. I can go and live it myself and go, yeah, that is a pain in the ass that I have to wait this amount of time or that amount of time or this or that. So when I go and do it now as a driver, I go, it gives me that inside information to go, okay, that is a bit harsh, or that could be changed, or how do I feel about that? Because it's quite easy as an organizer, just go, these are the rules, boys, like it or go away. But if you're a driver, you have to live those rules. It's different. So I'm excited for it. I think it's another way. I mean, I did something similar with the 2-battle format in Australia with Keep It Read, where I drove in their series and they did it. But again, you trade off massive driver happiness for, sometimes it can be quite long in terms of the battles. It can go on for quite, but if you've got 2 days to do it, it can be fine. And I think, selfishly as a driver, knowing I'm already qualified and I get to do 2 battles, I mean, it looks like Iron Drift King or a Formula Drift, setup is a lot more like, oh, thank God, I'm already in, as opposed to Drift Masters, where I'm living it through one of our drivers, Rusi Akiba, who's not qualifying, and you can see the amount of effort that goes into not getting in the show. So swings and roundabouts, I guess, but it's nice to see everybody trying something new. So I'm looking forward to being a part of it.
What you just said, that sigh of relief, right? That, okay, good. We can start the racing weekend without any pressure. I mean, that was the single most important reason why we went for that format. We have seen the need. I mean, of course, I talk to you now as someone who's very active in social media and very good at it, right? I talked to another driver today. He's also new. He came in late. He replaced another driver who had to drop out, and he's an influencer. I think the biggest car YouTuber of the Baltics. Yeah, he's very, very, very young and very good at what he's doing, and he is also good at social media. But 90% of European drifters are not. They just don't see the value. They don't know how to develop it. They always think they don't have the time for it. And we felt what we can do at least is give them the right mindset. So if they arrive to a venue that is very special, and it's can't argue about it. It's very special, right? And good weather, beach, water. We start the whole week with this drivers and team barbecue where we all just chill, hang out, and and go into it as relaxed as we can. I hope you all can continue and ride that wave of a very happy and good mood, because I think happy people share happiness and make other people happy.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why we went for that format.
I think it works really well. I think in some circumstances, just everything you add or everything you take away has its own merits. I mean, I've always been a fan of I've scored a 0 on my first qualifying run and you get a 90 on the second. And it's
of course, that's also great. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
But it is a high pressure situation. I think from a fan perspective, watching one driver on their own, obviously, is not as entertaining as watching two together. So I think I don't think in anything I've seen in drifting, there's a right or a wrong way. I think you kind of it's the sum of all of its parts. So as the whole event comes together, you'll know at the end, did it build better battles? Did it build a better excitement? Did it, because I find that even Red Bull TV don't broadcast qualifying from Drift Masters because it's on Drift Masters YouTube, because they are like, this is just too long. It goes on too long. It's kind of like not getting to a peak. It's just, going through the motions. So there's a level of the battles obviously being more entertaining, but then, sometimes you can get overkill with battles when you have too many and people sort of lose track of what's going on a little bit. So I think there's always a tug of war between what the fan wants and what the driver wants. And you're trying to find that middle ground. But I really do think every championship has to go one way or the other a little bit more. I think Iron Drift King is very much focusing on the driver's side and making sure the drivers are happy. But that's also fine because the fans are there for a festival weekend. So they don't care. They're there to camp. They're there to have a party. They're there to chill out. So more drifting, the better, right? But sometimes at race circuits, a fan might not want to be there for that long or length of time. They might want to just come for the 3 hours of the top 16, see that. That's all they want from it. So it swings and roundabouts. I don't know. I've always said that someone far cleverer than me is going to figure it all out, but we're all learning from each other.
I don't think there's anyone figuring it all out. I don't think it's...
No.
You would be one of those people who most probably has enough experience from around the world, to maybe find the perfect formula. But if your personal taste is not, going in that direction, you might decide in another way. So, yeah.
I think it's all going to come down to everybody doing little different things for the next couple of years. And eventually there'll be someone who comes together and says, I like this or that. I don't like this or that. And then put it together. And again, it's like the Rubik's Cube of drifting for 25 years. We're just turning one side and there's maybe a good one side's fine, the other side falls apart, then you keep twisting and twisting. And eventually all four sides are going to come together and everyone's going to go, that's the perfect formula. But I don't think we've tried everything yet. And we're still experimenting.
I think even if we, let's say someone figures out that perfect formula 3 years after that, we will change it again. There's always something new. And I think that's the cool thing.
Also, sometimes you want to change just for entertainment's sake to get people talking, just to do something different.
Same,
Yeah, I would argue 5 years ago, we thought we had it. We thought like, okay, cool. It's two run qualifying, this is good. And then we go into the battles and we go up from there. Everybody's happy. And, we can go from there. And we very quickly realized like, this is, you just look at numbers, right? Look at live stream viewers from any series and go, okay, the hardcore fans, the nerds, the me's are watching top to bottom. But then you realize like how quickly the numbers spike when you start seeing the top 16 and the top 8. And it's like, you can see how many people are really retained now. And then the discussion became like, well, how do we make that the whole time? How do we take the energy that happens in the top 8 and make sure that's happening the whole time? And that's where FD starts to get into the seating bracket. How can we start telling the stories and giving experience to the drivers that need more experience, that need more seat time, that maybe aren't even getting a chance to battle? And then that's where that comes from. But then, the downside of that is we don't get as much time to talk about each driver individually. That's the side effect of not having qualifying, right? Like, that's the part I kind of miss. So
I think that we if you look at Drift Masters from Finland, I was just thinking like it moves at a very quick pace, Drift Masters, which I'm sure as a fan is great to watch. Mm-hmm. But then if you look at Oliver Randalou turning up to the top 32 and his radiator starts water leaking out of it and he's out of competition before the battle starts, that's incredibly harsh for him.
Yeah.
And again, I think that would be okay if Oliver Randalou was paid €1 million a year to drive that car. He'd probably be like, whatever. But because he's funding a lot of this, that is an incredibly harsh situation. That said, Oliver Randalou is in Drift Masters because a bunch of people watch it, because it's fast paced. So it's like there's no perfect solution to that. It's just your day, it can be good or bad.
Yeah, you have to move forward. I think you might disappoint one team and one driver with that rule and with that pace, but you will disappoint a few thousand fans if they have to wait 10 minutes for something to happen. Right? It's not easy to make a decision here, and I'm personally I'm a fan of the clock. Yeah.
But Formula Drift have a very different method, which is it's longer because the drivers are given much more time to get their stuff together. But because they have airtime, guaranteed airtime to a certain extent, you get the likes of Ford and Toyota and stuff coming into the sport because they're getting a lot more exposure than they would be if they were Oliver Randalou's sponsor and he's just gone before the 32 starts. So you get more investment, more crazy cars, more professional teams in Formula Drift because it's essentially more advertising, more commercial breaks, more things like that. You get less of it in Drift Masters, but then will you see the same progression in terms of chassis and sponsorships and money for the drivers? So like if you look at any problem in drifting, there's an equal counter to it. And a fan will always jump in and go, hey, you should do this, as if no one's thought of it before. But you would go, yeah, but what if you said, right, now Formula Drift runs at 1,000,000 miles an hour and there's no delays, but we're going to lose Ford, Toyota, all these different things. Then you're like, oh, that's not good. And then if Drift Masters said the same, we're going to make it longer, but we're going to get more sponsorships and advertising, people go, oh, but I don't want it to be so long. So it's like the perfect thing that a fan wants actually crushes the sport eventually. So you're trying to balance everybody's expectations along the way. And I think, as I said before, we'll all find different things in series that we like and dislike, but from a driver or a fan. But I think it's going to eventually mesh into the perfect formula eventually, where it'll all balance in the middle. Maybe Drift Masters adopts Formula Drift's seating bracket, but then it loses the 5-minute rule in top 32. You never know where it all comes together, or whatever. You need 2 battles to lose, but it's a seating bracket thing and all. So it could be a lot of different things. Eventually in 5 years, we could be having this conversation going, what? We had it all. We just didn't realize it at the time in different series. Now, all of a sudden, it's in the one thing. And again, Iron Drift King doing some new things, different things. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try something new? If I was running a standalone event, I did the LZ World Tour. I put everybody on street tires that were like $50 because I was like, does it really affect the show if everyone's slower and closer? I think the casual fan, probably didn't even notice.
Yeah, I would argue Montreal was one of the best sets of battles I've ever watched. Like, it was incredible. It was so much fun. And you had Tommy Lemaire in a full FD legal pro car against Chelsea Denofa in a beat up old Fox body with, 300 horsepower, and they were of equal battle. But like, if you were to say that to FD or Drift Master, like, hey, everyone's going to go on tires that can do 10 laps. Everyone would be like, yeah, there's no way that's going to work. That's going to be terrible.
But now you've also gone too far because then guys are going to go, well, why the hell did I spend $200,000 on this car if it's just going to be spinning terrible tires? So you're going, they've invested all their money in these cars at the way it is now. So again, there is no perfect solution. We can talk about it. We spend every time we have a few beers with anybody, you talk about all these different things that are going to happen. And I think it'll gradually keep improving. I definitely think the one important thing to remember is that whether you watch our Formula Drift, whether you watch Drift Masters, or you watch Iron Drift King, you watch D1, whatever, it's far better than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that is all that matters, is it a better product now than it was? And I would say across the board, no one can argue it's worse now than it was 5 years ago. So there is improvement all the time.
Yes,
so that's very positive.
That's a great thing. Definitely.
Yeah. I think just having Iron Drift King, take this step to be like, we're gonna, I can't reveal too much of behind the scenes, but seeing the chat with the judges where the line that started was basically, okay, everything you know about judging, I want you to forget it and start from the beginning. What makes a good drift battle? What makes a good tandem? What makes a good lead? Don't use any language that we already use and find a new way to describe it. And it's morphed into a new system that I know we'll end up doing a standalone episode on. That is inspired by the way we've done it, but is not the way we've done it. And that's very important. And I know from my perspective, from everybody in drifting's perspective, no matter if you're a casual fan or an event organizer, you're going to be looking at this going like, okay, show me, let's see how it works. Let's see what the benefits are. Let's see what the drawbacks are.
And for me, if Marcel and the crew figure it out, I'll be the first one to say, boom, somebody figured it out. This is much better. We should implement this straight away in other things. From my perspective. But from my perspective, like there's no, like one of the 7 deadly sins is pride. Pride is a dangerous game.
Yeah.
If your pride gets in the way of progress, then you're not the person who should lead the sport, in my opinion. You should always have an open mind and say, somebody somewhere could figure this out, and we're going to put our hands up and say they figured it out. And that's what I'm always waiting for it. Some things I'll agree and disagree. Of course, I have opinions, but from my perspective now, I think I'm always excited to see somebody come with something fresh or new. You know, I mean, you look at it from Formula D style of judging to Driftmaster style of judging to D1 with the DOS system. All three systems, no matter what system you put in, people will complain it's the wrong system anyway, because it's a subjective sport. But if somebody can improve it, fantastic. And I think I noticed that D1 last year, for the first time ever, had outer zones with white boxes. Imagine, that is coming from FD and Driftmasters influencing the first series, going all the way full circle. So that's great to see.
But we have FD that's using, potentiometers to show acceleration, which is very much a DOS box system where it's like, we're going to take that idea because we don't necessarily think it's the best way to do it, but we're going to take something from that, which is having a visual indicator, having data that shows when the cars speed up and slow down, because it can help us do something else. And then, you take that. I just did a video on it where in New Jersey, one of those boxes failed. And originally your thought is, oh, the light wasn't on, that person didn't decel. But upon human investigation, went, whoa, this box is doing something weird. And that person did decel. There's no way around it. The light is lying. And, you have to have both of those things to make it work. Because if that was just a D1 thing, that box said the guy was on throttle the whole way, whereas clearly he was not. So it's like, those are your...
But then even because I speak to some guys, especially Ruse, our driver, who competed in D1 with the DOS system, and he was like, you have no idea sometimes what the score is going to be at the end of the run.
I know.
But he also said that nobody ever complains because the DOS system isn't going to have to write an explanation to it on the Maximum Driftcast discussion to say why it went with that score, right? So again, you can't really call out a machine for doing something. Well, so in many ways, they have the drivers going, I don't know what's going on here with the score, but the fan is going, well, it's not, robbed or rigged or all these words that people do controversially to say, oh, it's all the judges, this, that, and the other. I mean, I've seen comments about judging for 10 years and they're just fantastic. Like they're just the most idiotic comments sometimes. And like my favorite someone was saying that the judges at the weekend in Driftmasters were so much better than the judges at the last two rounds, because they got all the calls right, even though they're the same judges as the last 3 years or 4 years. So to me, it's just like, there's always going to be that. It's the referee in a soccer match. Should it have been a penalty? Should it not have been a penalty? It's the human aspect. And they brought in, I always look at other sports too, which is important when you're trying to create something good in a product in motorsport. You look at VAR, which they brought into Premier League football, where they have, a team looking at all the replays and all the sensors, and they still mess it up all the time. And now they're talking about getting rid of VAR because it's so unreliable, even though it's completely, another 3 judges. So I think there's no perfect solution. I think we got to be thankful that people care so much. And I'm excited to see how the FD season plays out with the Driftmaster season and the Iron Drift King event, because at the end of the year, we're going to have so much more data to sit there and say, well, who did what and how did it work? Because there's also all new systems. You don't think about the flaws of them until it actually happens either. So you have to see things all run through. And again, I'm just excited that Marcel's trying something new, FD's trying something new, and even Driftmasters are trying something new, which is great.
I think for us, that's what I also said 2 days ago. Frederick Aspo called me, and we talked about something else, and he was first. It was actually the first conversation we ever had. Right, I didn't even have his. I didn't have his phone number, and I just got a phone call from some random number, and then I was like, okay, hi, and he complimented me on the Iron Drift King, and I had, because he said, and it's also, of course, the system that you're running is great promotion, and it creates a hype. I said that, and then I had to stop him because thank you for the compliment. But the reason we do this is because we are the biggest fans of the sport, and we thought there's more to it. We didn't do it to create a hype. Of course, it comes with it. Of course, it's important for the promotion and. But this was not the reason. And I've said that many times, and I just have to repeat myself because I want people to believe me. This has been done because we believe there is a need for that someone tries something different, for various reasons. The the system that we're running when it comes to top 64 double elimination wouldn't work, I believe, not in the championship. Not in that format, not in full. But for, of course, as a standalone event, that is, we have the chance to try something and to kickstart maybe some movement, especially for the drivers. So, and I believe just, what is today? Thursday, 3 days ago, we found a visual aid for the fans and the judges to make sure everyone understands why someone was judged the way he was judged. I had this idea since January. It just came to me, and I talked to 25, 30 people, and they all said, it's great, but, and I presented it again on Monday, and we all agreed on that this can really, really, really work. And I hope we found something that, because this can be implemented in any drifting competition on the planet. It's nothing complicated, nothing expensive. I will not go into it now, because it's too early for that. We are just testing it also, but I think there's so much more.
Such a Dave Egan way to sell something.
So Dave Egan.
It's like, we got it, but hold on to the next episode, and then we'll tell you all about it.
I'm very, very proud. We also ended our meeting then on Monday night, and I said that let's not get into anything else. We have so much endorphin in our bodies right now. We are on such a high. Let's stop it here before we find an issue. But let's move forward with something else. But that was a moment where I was like, when those six judges, that's so cool. That's cooler than I ever thought. 6 months ago when we had this idea, I was like, okay, it's cool. It eliminates a few issues. Now we have 6 judges, and the judging system that we figured out, I think, fits it so great. So I'm very proud of that. And when those guys with that experience, I mean, we have FD judges, we have Irish judges, we have Scandinavian judges, we have digital judges. We are also getting into who are our judges, actually, because no one knows yet, or no one talks about it. When they said, yeah, this can actually work, that's a great idea, that was for me, that was like, fuck yeah, great, great. Yeah. This can be such a good thing. I was so proud of it. And I knock on wood, my table's wood. I knock on wood that this is going to work, and we all have a really good time. And sporters, fans, drivers, and judges, everyone has 100% understanding of what just happened, and this is what I wanted to achieve.
I think this is what me and Marcel, we were having a conversation in Finland. I'm not going to say there was alcohol involved, but there was definitely alcohol involved, and we were having a conversation. And I remember what I was trying to say to him, because we were speaking about some of this stuff. And I said, we're all here kind of temporarily in charge of things sometimes. Like I might not be in charge of things in 2 years, and someone else might be, whatever. And we're all just a part of it for a short period of time. But if you can add a lot in that short period of time, you're leaving a memory. You've done something for the sport that people remember, which is almost more important than any money you made out of it or financial gain. You've added something. And that's why I think all these new ideas and different things that you guys are coming up with is that you never know. It could be the thing, that catalyst that sends things in a different direction, and people go, oh, that was that guy's idea, or he came in and changed this or changed that. So I think innovation is key. And yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I have no idea what you're talking about, Marcel, but I'm very excited to see what it all comes out. And for me as a fan, as well, it's like, it's good to see people try new things, because I probably one of the few people that can watch something be implemented and instantly go, I know how much it's going to cost to do that. I know what the downside of that is. I know where that's going to have a problem somewhere else. And I can be very critical while being supportive. But in a realistic way, I can say, you know what, they might be onto something here that actually really works. And it's like I was talking to Adam LZ about the seating bracket in FD, and he was like, it's so much better for drivers, so much better for this. And I was like, yeah. I go, so it's everything is great about it, except it's very hard to explain to someone who doesn't watch drifting. Yeah. It's like a very hard thing to say. Well, what's happening now is, like, I was trying to explain that to my mom. She would go, well, how did he? Well, he won. So why does he have to go again the next day? And I'm like, well, he didn't win the whole thing. He won a bit of it. So in some ways, and you're obviously dealing with that, Jacob, this year, of trying to make it a layman's thing to explain. But at the same time, when you watch it, it is more entertaining. So we're getting closer. And I think from judging as well, we've got systems where could we make a system that the fans would believe the judging decisions more than it's some sort of controversy or rigged thing or whatever, where as you guys know, you've been there, it's 100% not in any way, shape or form. Not even a slight doubt of that in my mind at any event I run. But I would say if they believe it is, then there's obviously some disconnect between, where everything is going. So I'm excited to see it. I think it's exciting that we're still in 2024 coming up with new ideas for drifting, and we're only implementing probably the biggest changes in drifting are probably coming this year.
I think, yes.
In 2024.
I do think we're going to look back, 5 years, 10 years from now on 2024 as very much a pinnacle, a big shift in drifting in general, with the changes, with the driving, with kind of everything, events going. I mean, I had the chance to speak to a couple of event organizers at Guttville from other events all over the world. And it was like, everybody kind of has that same feeling right now where we're in the middle of something that we don't appreciate yet. Like it's happening right now. And we will look back on this and be like, what the hell was that year? Good, bad, otherwise, but it is definitely a year where everyone kind of let their hair down and was like, you know what? Let's just try something. Like, why are we so stuck? Why have we keep doing what we've always done? We're going to keep getting what we've always gotten. So let's go try
risky.
Something else.
I mean, it's very risky for everybody involved to do new things and hope, it all works out, because I would say risky in one sense for Formula Drift, because it's a huge departure from what they've done before. And I think Ryan has just, I don't know, I looked at Ryan differently. I spoke to him in Irwindale and I kind of had a conversation with him there, and I was saying, just do it, and then let people will just have to do it. And then I was saying, that would have been an alien concept in Formula Drift for a long time, of like just going mad and doing something different, but it's worked really well. And then I think if you look at Marcel again, you've all these ideas, but you've only one weekend to get them right. You don't have another 3-4 events that year to go, let's fine tune this. So, and I know that from you're throwing all new at an event, which sometimes on its own is difficult just to do an event and get it to run, especially in the venue you guys have, where it's a very unusual venue. You're going that's hard enough. Now you're going to throw new judging, new systems, new communications, new everything at it. So that's a big risk, because I'm pretty sure you could do Iron Drift King very simple, the way you've done it for the last 2 years, and it would have been absolutely fine, and people would have been like, cool, no problem. But you've been pushed, and this is not anyone pushing you to do it. You've pushed yourself to do it. So now you've got a challenge on your hands on top of the event to make it so different. And I think I think you're a bit like me. That's what's making this exciting for you on the run up, that it's not just another event, that you're doing something new. And that gives you a more of a buzz as an organizer going, oh, this is, wait till they see this. That's kind of the way I think you're probably
gives
thinking.
But you're absolutely right. We had to make a decision, right? And that was so scary. That was so scary, because last year was the first event we had break even, right? It was so expensive. The first 2 years especially, we had a huge loss because of those walls, that we bought, those fences, absolutely crazy. And we were like, okay, now it worked. So why do we change absolutely everything about it, right? Except the location. And but one of our shareholders is very advanced age, okay? And he said, I think this, and he has no connection to drifting, I have to say that, at all. Before he met Marcus and me, there was no connection there. And so everything he knows from us. And he said, I think Iron Drift King isn't Iron Drift King if we don't try something, right? And that was so weird for me to hear, but also so important, because if he gets it, if he gets Iron Drift King, then I think everyone else deserves that we invent ourselves new, that we go for what we always wanted. We wanted to create something special for the sport and help the sport progress. And here we are. Last weekend in Power Park, I talked to so many people. Everyone was so positive about it. And that gave me stomach pain. I was like, oh God. They're all so excited. This is the risk, right? This is the risk. You have to be so sure about what you're saying and what you're doing. This really has to work. And seeing everyone so excited about it, being so positive, felt so great. But I was so scared on Sunday. I came home and I said to my wife, I'm so scared. Yeah. And so scared. But
you know what? Well, that's how, as organizers, that's the one thing that people don't ever think about, is that we go, this is going to be awesome. You should buy your tickets. come and watch this thing. We're going to do an amazing job. It's going to be the best thing you've ever seen. It's going to be unreal. And then you sit there going, right now I have to do it. And then like everybody's expectations are very high and you've got to pull that off. But I think that's part and parcel of the gig. That's part and parcel of the buzz. And, you know, I think there's a level of togetherness in drifting at the moment that I think when you go to Iron Drift King, you'll realize that drivers, the fans, drivers, including me, are all willing the event on to be a success. So you have the team behind you already. People want to have a good time. They want to see good drifting. They want it to be something monumental. So you just got to put the pieces of the puzzle organizationally there to do it. And I said, everyone else will do their job, from Jacob to the judges, to everybody will be there pushing that event as far as it can. I think once you have that, I think as an organizer, sometimes then you stand back and watch the talent just carry the event across the line. And that's what I usually do, is say, I'll put the pieces there. I'll set up the party. I'll put out all the cake. I'll put out all the music, everything. But whether it's a good or bad party is up to the people who come to the party. And generally the people that come to drifting are great dudes.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. The follow through, I mean, me working in marketing for a living, like, you know, it's our job to do that, to build that hype, to get the anticipation going. And then it's like, often I do feel a little bit relieved, because once the event starts, like, my job is kind of over, and all I do is just watch the gate and see how many people walk in and go, cool, I've spent the last 6 months, 3 months, whatever, trying to get this moment to happen, having almost no idea. I mean, you can look at pre-sale and all that stuff, but all three of us know pre-sale only means so much. Yeah. And then you have to sit there and watch the gate and look, you know, refresh the ticket counter to be like, what's going to happen? And then after the event, you're like reading the reviews and looking at the numbers, being like, okay, cool. Did we do the thing we said we were going to do? Did people understand what we were trying to convey? And it's definitely nerve wracking. I mean, I'm happy now that I get to, you know, get to do the commentary during the event, because it distracts me a little bit from sitting there having to just refresh the numbers over and over again.
I think that's why when I ran series, I enjoyed doing commentary, because you were so focused on what was happening on the track that all the financials that you were stressing about, you know that you can't check anything until it's over. Yeah. And that would be either a good moment or a bad moment. But it would be kind of, I would always say, once we go live at the start, just don't tell me anything until it's over. It's not going to make any difference anyway. Now anymore, we got to do it. Yeah. And so then you afterwards, you can sit down and be depressed or excited about how it went financially. But generally, I think as an organizer, you're always looking at a break-even point as being, you know, a good time. Yeah. And then a little bit of money made is great. But I definitely understand, because I can look at any event now from doing over 250 of them and look at it and go, I can tell you how much this costs roughly versus how much, if I, you know, and I can see it from the outside, whether it's any event anywhere in the world. I can go, I'll tell you if this is making as much money as people think it is. And then some people will say, oh, they had, you know, 6,000 people there. They all paid €50, blah, blah, blah. That's how much money they made. I'm like, what? Nope. I was like, here, I'll tell you what that costs. See that over there? That costs €10,000. They're like, what? I'm like, and they have 4 of them. And then, you know, so you go through it like, and then they go, oh, right. Okay. So that's a big part of it. And I think drift events, especially, expensive to run, difficult to run, a lot of stupid stuff that you wouldn't have even at a concert that you have to put in there. But I respect anybody running it. And I said, that's why I wanted to do Iron Drift King, because I've watched that event for the last 3 years in the flesh. And last year I was tempted to bring a car and compete in Iron Drift King and try and do the announcing and Drift Masters at the same time. And I was like, that's just going to be very difficult to get my head in the game to do both. But this year, I was like, oh, I can go. I've got the freedom on the schedule, and I have a car, I have the team. So I'm super pumped to do it. Because even just to say I did it, like, I've had a great time in Germany the last 3 times I've been there. This time is going to be even better because I get to actually be part of the show. So I'm so excited.
For me, it's super weird that you're coming and driving. Like you know, even if this is the topic of this episode, like, you know, I'm listening to you and then you're saying, yeah, I'm bringing a car, and I'm like, yeah, he's actually driving. You know, like, I forgot again, because we're talking so much about your career as, you know, as a media company and as an organizer and commentator and then I forget that you're actually going to participate. And I'm really looking forward to see you on track, because I have no idea. I've never seen you sitting in a car, even just on video. I've never seen it.
Yeah, for me, it's like, you know, I was talking to Max Heidrich and I was saying, like, I'm going to go drift with you. And he was like, this is so much fun. I was like, I know, I'm drifting with the guys I've been, you know, announcing for the last 10 years. I get to go and drive with them. I get to go and have fun. I get to have, let's say, casual conversations behind. I mean, one of my favorite parts of a drift event as a driver is the talking out of the car in the queue and the grid, because
it's great.
You're having such a different conversation. You know, the relief, the excitement, the hype, what are you worried about, all that. It's so honest, I think, those conversations back then, because you're all feeling that nervousness, and I love that. And it's a case of this will be I want to say, like, first top level European competition I've ever competed in. I've competed in a lot of Irish Drift Championship, British Drift Championship, and stuff like that, but never competed in this level of car at this level of competition. So a lot of expectation. But I mean, at this stage, well, I always say, over the years, we've had a lot of challenges with drift games and what we've done. And, like, you know, every time it seemed like insurmountable, we just go, fuck it, we'll just do it. Then it's just always that attitude of pushing forward. So it would be amazing. I had this idea in my head of a story of you know, losing my drift car, losing my in a fire, then buying a new car on a total whim from going to Spain, bringing the car back from Holland, drifting it in an airfield in Germany, then going back to Germany to compete at Iron Drift King. Like, it's just such a weird, like, if you told me this in January, this would be nonsense to me. And I was like, but that's what makes it so entertaining. Yeah. So I'm really excited. I
think listening to you, you know, I was just thinking, I think people that are involved in drifting have one great ability, and this is to ignore consequences. Like, not stupidly, but I think if there is 1% chance what we are planning could work, we're still going for it, even if 99% of it says we shouldn't do that. And I think this is why drifting is so cool. This is why it's still progressing, right? And that's why it's so interesting. But you need really, really, really weird people to do that. This is...
Well, think about it, Marcel. Like, if you do your job at Iron Drift King badly, then a lot of people are disappointed. Yeah. Whereas if I do my job at Iron Drift King badly, it's just me. So it's a lot easier to disappoint one person than it is everybody.
Thank you for the pep talk.
So I know that stress. I mean, I was like, this is easy. Yeah. If I do badly, hey, it's only me that has to deal with it. Whereas, you know, it's much more difficult, even as a commentator or announcer. Yeah. You know, you're much more in the public eye. I mean, as a driver, obviously, financially, it's much more difficult. Risk-wise, physically, it's much more. But I feel like driving, to me, is the fact that I would go to an event and only have to focus on one singular thing, which is driving a car, as opposed to 100 things going on at the one time. To be honest, it's a lot easier, in my opinion. Not easier to win or be good, but just easier mentally. I think it's easier to do.
Yeah, just that singular focus is much easier to grasp, that's for sure.
I cannot relate to that at all. I was thinking very often if I should go back driving, because I would like to somehow see, could I ever get that good? But honestly, after last weekend, I was like, nah. I need 1 million euros at least and a full year off of everything to get back to that level. Not back. Yeah, I mean, to get that level. Me, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the last, as I said before in the podcast, it's the last hurdle for me. It's the last thing in drifting. If I was, I'm always talking about this pro campaign that I want to do is the finishing the story, because I was like, I started off by working every rank through drifting all the way up to wanting to win a pro event on my own. And that's the last thing I've left to complete. I mean, I'll still do everything else the way I do it, but as an achievement level, it's the only thing I haven't done in drifting is win crown. Something significant. Okay, yeah. And I say if I've run the events, I've announced the events, and then if I won an event, it's like, that's me. I started drifting at the bottom level in a 100 horsepower 86 Corolla, and I go all the way to 1,000 horsepower Supra and win an event, and all the adventure in between. It's the last thing that I would like to achieve. And I think that's very much why Josh is also competing at the moment, is that he spent 10 years of his life watching people drift, promoting people drifting, making videos of people drifting. Now he's getting a chance to actually drift himself as like a good, really interesting thing we saw the other day was that Josh's first event 10 years ago or 9 years ago, when Josh first came to Ireland, we know on Facebook where your memories come up. There's a little video, grainy one from the phones back then 9 years ago, of Josh doing a kickflip over the broken bumper of the Low Brain Drifters S13 in the paddock after an IDC event.
Oh, no way.
And now he drives the Low Brain Drifters
that's
S13.
Cool,
so to me, there's the stories that like keep us all enthusiastic about things. Is that you keep being positive and you keep pushing, even when it seems kind of stupid a lot of time. Amazing things happen. And if you told me I'd be sitting at Iron Drift King lining up with the whole arena there in 1,000 horsepower carbon Kevlar Supra, I'd have been like, this is never going to happen. So I'm taking those opportunities, and why wouldn't I? It's a good story. I think at the end of it, I have nothing to lose, whether I win, lose, or draw, or do great.
You just have to gain.
I can say that I ticked the box. I was there. I was part of it, and I took the risk like everybody else.
Yeah, it's funny how those moments come full circle. I mean, I had one similar where it's me interviewing Chris Forsberg almost 10 years ago. And it's like, that was before I was even really into drifting. It was just like, I was trying to do the YouTuber thing. And it's like, you know, I can look back on that moment and be like, holy shit. Now, you know, I would call him a friend, like a guy that I could call and be like, yo, hey, can you help me out with this thing? But meanwhile, you know, me 10 years ago looking at like, holy shit, this is a professional race car driver that I'm about to talk to. It is weird how it starts to,
I think especially from our, I think Jacob, you and I have a similar story in that. As I mean, I queued for 2.5 hours to meet Mad Mike at Irwindale, you know, and now I was doing events with Mad Mike last year, and I consider him someone I can hit an Instagram message to. So I started as a fan of drifting, and I worked pretty hard to get into a position where I was more than a fan. And then now, obviously, this is absolute bonus time where I am now. I don't know how we got here. But it would be a case of saying that I do appreciate every moment. And I mean, I was commentating on Marcel driving in Drift GP and Drift All-Stars, you know, and looking up to these pro drivers. And now I'm driving at Marcel's event as a pro driver. So it doesn't, like, the whole thing is just upside down all the time.
It's complete bunkers. Yeah, that's true.
But I think that's kind of, I always said, you know, at the end of drifting, when I finish up, I'll have no money, but man, will I have some stories. And I was like, I'll be that guy that could go on for hours about stupid stories. So I think, you know, memories are the currency of drifting. That's what I always say, is that you're never going to sell your drift car for more money than you bought it. You're never going to make any money off it, but you've got so many memories as currency that if people ask you any news, you're like, wow, wait till you hear this. So that's something that I think money can't buy, is friendships and partnerships and experiences. And I think that's kind of what it's all about. The journey is the point.
I think that reflects even in the fan base too. I mean, obviously we're all very close to it, but we all have already just jumped back to when we were fans, when we were in the grandstands, when we were lining up, when we were booking these trips. Like some of my greatest memories with my friends were at Grid Lifes years and years ago. You know, even me looking back at last year, it's like, I picture, I go back to last year as like one of the coolest moments, even you and I chatting, Dave, and you being like, hey, you want to jump in the booth really quick? Like, at the time, dude, I bet you my eyes were about this big when you asked me that. And now,
but like I said, like you were on the rise commentating, and I really liked your style of what you were doing. And it wasn't style per se, it was the passion and the level of interest you had. You reminded me a lot of me when I started doing commentary. I wanted to be everywhere, do everything. I wanted to know Dave. Yeah, but I was like, I wanted to be everywhere. I wanted to be as good as I could be, but not for my own sake, for the sport's sake, to give it the best shot, most information. And last year I was like, hey, you want to jump in and do a little bit on Drift Masters? Because I know when I was back in those days, if someone had said to me, hey, you want to do 5-10 minutes on Formula Drift? I'd have been like, absolutely. Yeah. This would be like a dream come true. So it's like one of those things where we all help each other. And in the long run, it all helps anyway, because I think you've done a great job of being center point now between a lot of different things, LZ World Tour, in terms of Iron Drift King, in terms of Formula Drift. Like, you're a couple of years in the sport and you're already a center point, but that's not because you want it to be. That's just because of your enthusiasm and people want to collaborate with you. So I think that's a big compliment for you. And as I said, same for Marcel, to go from a driver who was in the scene, knowing what he knows, hearing what he hears, having all of that sort of from the other side, using that as fuel to go and build your own event, which is a bananas event. But in the middle of an abandoned quarry in an island in Germany, it's nuts. And I think all that comes to fruition when we could have this conversation and we all have a connection through different things. But again, that's what a drift event is. A bunch of connections, a bunch of different people coming together. Yeah. And it's so nice that it's so international and so universal now that, you know, especially for me in the last 3 years, like I'm running out of people that I want to meet, which is even more ridiculous. Like, I'm running out of people in the scene that I want to meet, because I've kind of met all of them now. And I'm like, these people are all awesome. They're just like really good people.
What's crazy to think about is we all, you know, mentioned going to events and being fans is the fact that, like, at Iron Drift King, there is a very good chance that the next competitor, the next champion, the next announcer, the next event promoter is probably going to be sitting in those stands. Like that's the part that I always have to remember whenever I'm going to these events now, is like the next me, the next Dave, the next Marcel, I'm probably going to meet, because they're as enthusiastic as I was back then. I know for me, 10 years ago, if there was somebody there that I looked up to, I inspired to be like, I was doing everything I could to go and meet them and shake their hand and stuff like that. So that's why I always try to take as much time as I possibly can in those events. But it's also why I want to push and make sure people come to events, because without me going to that first grid life, without me seeing Ryan Turk, rip his white 86 around that huge corner, I wouldn't be doing this. It was that pinnacle moment, that exact drift, that I have a video of it. I can point to the exact moment where I went, oh shit, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And that's what I want people to have, that exact moment coming to events. And that's why I want to push this event so much, because somebody might see the rules or the changes or all the fan interactions that are being planned with the drivers and be like, oh, this is it. This is my moment. And that person could be the next us. And that's what's so fucking cool. And that's the whole thing.
That's the cool thing. And I think for me, it's always about, even our team now and the people we're hiring at Drift Games are getting younger and younger, because I'm like, we need another generation of this.
You're just getting older and older, Dave. That's all.
I'm getting older, but also I'm feeling like I want to pass that on. I want people to see it the way I see it, or they now, especially some of the younger guys that work for me, almost see how random and ridiculous how all of this progression happens, because it's just conversations and half chances and different things. And they're beginning to believe a little bit of that too, saying it's not just about formulas and Excel sheets. It's about conversations. It's about people. And it just happens. And then all of a sudden, you're standing there, me and Josh are, how we got the Liberty Walk deal is like, you couldn't even write it down. A guy came to, I think it could have been Iron Drift King. I'm not even sure if I remember, but he didn't have a media pass, and he was a really talented young kid. And our boys said, we'll give you our pass on our team if you give us some footage back or whatever. Helped him out. Never really thought much more about it. Long story short, we're coming through SEMA last year, through a hotel, and he says, what's up, guys? And he's now the videographer for Liberty Walk. Gets us the meeting with Liberty Walk. Then we go and gamble and drink a lot, and eventually a kit for Lamborghini comes out of it. But if I was to write that down as a strategy, how would you write that? Become friends with a young media kid who has no credentials. Then maybe in 2 years he'll be like, how would you even? I think it's just be nice to everybody, be very enthusiastic, help everybody out, and eventually it all comes full circle, I think. And that's what, more than anybody in the space, we've realized this year, is that we did a lot of helping people out because we just wanted everyone to have a great time, but it doesn't go unnoticed. And this year, obviously, we received so much support from everybody who we've had interactions with, and we're chatty guys. So we've talked to everybody all corners of the world because we love doing what we do. And it all came back kind of twofold when things went to pieces this year. So it's been a really nice journey. I suppose I got my payoff without ever wanting it in a way. And this is my kind of swan song of now doing some pro driving and maybe ticking some of the last few boxes I have in drifting to say, I'm happy to sit and be an announcer. I'm happy to sit and do, a lot of cool events. I'm happy. I love all that. But just for my own personal sake, there's a little bit of there. And I want to just do myself just to say, no, I did it. I achieved it. Whether I was good, bad, or indifferent, I gave it a go. And that's what this is exciting for me, especially Iron Drift King. And we'll have the whole crew there. They're looking forward to only having one car to run, which is new for them. And they're all coming just to hang out for the weekend, enjoy it. Like, we just want to have a great time and party and have a good time on top of the drifting. And yeah, I'm pumped. This is probably the most excited personally I've been for an event, because I get to drive my new crazy car in front of some really good fans in an arena that I have watched probably more runs and practice than any other event. I sit and watch a lot of Iron Drift King outside of Drift Masters. That was the first time I sat and watched the whole event from start to finish, because I wasn't announcing it, and I loved it. So I'm looking forward to being part of it, or being a piece of it in the wall, either or. But I'll be at least it'll be on camera. I'll get a good thumbnail out of it. Like, I crashed my brand new Supra at Iron Drift King. I mean, either way,
he's already planning. Yeah, good. I mean, really, you with my
YouTube face, I'm like, oh no, I crashed my Supra.
In brackets, bad mood. Like,
What Josh did say, he goes, if you're going to lose, you better crash, because it's going to be very boring if you just lose by being a bit of a wimp and not doing a good run. So I was like, okay, we'll give it a good go.
If you're going to fall down, do it well. Yeah,
do it spectacularly.
Exactly. Like I said, I'm incredibly honored to get to call your runs. It's going to be a ton of fun. I'm definitely going to take the piss, that's for sure, because I feel like I have to. I owe it to you.
I welcome it.
I feel like I owe it to you at this point. It is incredible how kind of full circle the whole thing is going to be. And I mean, for anybody listening or anybody just, thinking at home, if you're on the fence about this, like, all of this, everything we're doing right now all started because we went to a drift event or we went to a race event or we met the right person. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this whole thing is everything we're doing, everything we're excited about all came down to, we took a chance and went to an event. And that's what spurred it all on. I would
say that every single person that works for Drift Games went to an event in person just to watch it, just to take photos, just to be a part of it, got in a conversation, and ended up with drifting as their career. You're never going to do that from your computer or your phone. You're going to do it by being there. So if you want to go and be a part of the scene, you physically need to be part of it. It's not something you can do online very easily. So I would, again, recommend, if you're picking a drift event, any drift event, doesn't matter where it is in the world, go to it, watch it, see it in the flesh, talk to the person beside you, talk to the guy in the pits. You never know what's going to happen, because that's pretty much my last 10 years. It's just having conversations that lead to crazy things, and that only happens from being there and being an active part of the community, I think.
100%.
Yeah.
Hey, I still, because we didn't talk in Finland about it, off topic a little bit, but that Mazda RX-7 that you guys built, I think that is honestly, in person, that caused the most beautiful machinery I've ever seen. This is so.
I'll tell you what, it's a controversial one. I know that.
Oh yeah.
But But I like that, because I mean, I said it to. It's funny. Craig, who works for me, is 20. What is he? 20 years of age. So he was like, he's still like an RX-7 in general is like so cool to him. So when we were taking off the Ori Yamamiya and putting all the livery walk stuff, he was like, oh, I don't know, like they look so cool. And I was like, you do realize for 15 years I've been just looking at that style of RX-7 over and over and over again. I want to do something totally out the box. And again, someone was saying to me at the event, I was, think about it. One, we ended up having to build an RX-7 in 7 days in 3 sheds, including our shed not even having a door on it, 1 toolbox. Lost the instructions from the body kit, so we had to figure out how it all went together. Such a laugh, such good fun, such good camaraderie. All of our talented friends in Ireland, like our painter slept in a sleeping bag in the booth. Our livery guy had, that it was so many things that happened. Then it had to fit on a truck. We had to take the front end off Adam LZ's E36 just to fit the RX-7 in the top of the truck with everything else. We bring it to Finland. Liberty Walk fly there. We present the car. They love it. We base delivery on an old 90s Porsche a team from Japan. They end up reaching out to us saying they're honored that we used their livery. And I was like, you tell me if we left that car alone, any of this would have happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not even just about the car. It's how much that car brought together the friends, the sponsors, the fans. And it's out there with, Kato-san waving flags in the front of a Drift Masters parade in Finland. There is no way if we left that car alone and I drove it anywhere in Ireland, I would get as much of a buzz out of I did it that 2 weeks of building that car. So to me, yes, I like how the car looks, obviously, but what it represents for us and what we did and the bounce back and the whole Japanese connection, like an authentic connection of not imitating something from Japan, but doing it in collaboration, which is not often done in Europe, of collaborating with a Japanese company on something. All of that is a memory I'll never forget. So that car is very special to me in terms of putting it all together. So it's cool. And like we even messed up the tune on it, so it sounded more like a 3 or 4 rotor and everything. We were having so much fun.
I was wondering, because I woke up to because the hotel was right on the track that we had, and I was like, what is happening? Is someone with the accelerator? And I was saying, no, it has to be the Mazda.
We were like, it's the world's cheapest Bridgeport we were trying to find. So we were shooting the car, and we had a great fun time doing it. It was just good laughs, and I think cars, to me now, after owning so many, maybe like 200 cars in my whole life, probably most of the ones I would ever want, is now about what story can this car build for me as a memory. And owning, yeah, sure, I could own a 34 GTR or whatever if I wanted to, but I just don't, there'll be nothing about it that would make me go, oh, this is like exciting. So when does this air, this episode?
Probably
in the next 3 to 5 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's after Sunday, I could tell you what we're building next, but because we're releasing it on Sunday.
Yeah, then just say it.
That's on Marcel.
And we release it on Monday. I can make sure of that.
Okay, so we ended up. This is how random we are as people. Just as a little teaser, we were coming home from Finland, and we were like, we just built this RX-7. What's the next crazy thing? And I was sitting there. I was really hungover, and we had a 4-hour layover. So I was like, you know the way Laurie Heinen and all these guys are putting NASCAR engines into JDM cars. What if we put a JDM engine into a NASCAR? And right now, we have got a 1JZ sitting in a NASCAR, and this is Thursday, and we got back on Monday. So we went to the UK, bought a 2007 NASCAR, full car that competed in the NASCAR Cup Series in the US. That was at Goodwood. The engine failed. We took the engine and gearbox out, and we're putting a 1JZ in it and using it to drift next week.
I know
of course,
exactly
completely
what car
normal
that is.
Ford.
That's funny.
And I was like, and I said, you know what? This cost me less than buying a Chaser. So I was like, we're going to get so much more smiles for miles out of this thing. And obviously I was a big Days of Thunder fan when I was a kid. And all that. So we were like, this is just perfect. So this is kind of the stuff that interests me with cars now, is like stupid tasks, stupid challenges, and a bunch of Irish lads going, I've never even seen a NASCAR before. Like the guy who's fabricating this at the moment has never, is going, where does this go? Where's this pipe go? What's this for? And it's just been such a laugh. So I think this year we've lost a lot of those inhibitions of trying to, I don't know, build cars for resale or build them for value. We're like, let's just build some stupid stuff and let's go have fun. And I think that's what Iron Drift King is to it as well. Like, why not just go there, have some fun, have a great weekend, film what happens. Expectations are low, but our belief is high. So I was like, we can go there. And if I don't do well, I'm okay. If I do well, it's only a bonus. So
yeah, that's
I'm
true.
I'm going to be coming swinging. But everything this year we've tried to turn our hand to with blind stupidity. What we call it is toxic positivity. If we end up with some toxic positivity there, we could do really well. If I believe I'm as good as everybody there, I'll probably do as well. If I don't, I don't. So you got to have a little bit of belief.
Yeah. No, it's like I can't express enough how much I'm looking forward to this event. I mean, I'm starting to now plan out what my next month and a bit looks like. And I was like, oh shit, like I got to book flights. I got to get all this going. And then I got that like urge again to be like, oh, I'm so like just so pumped for it. I mean, with the
we were going on
a.
There was only three of us. I think it was three of us were going. Yeah, like videographer, me, and mechanic, and we were going to jump in with the DBM team to help run the car. Mm-hmm. Now there's like 20 guys want to come, 25 guys want to come because like, we don't want to miss like the fun. We don't want to miss the fun of being in Germany for the weekend. So I think the whole extended Drift Games team are like ready to fly out, get some rental cars, head there for the weekend, have a good time, enjoy the event. And, just have a good time. I think it's going to be a nice, relaxing event for them as opposed to always having to work. They actually just said, whoa, it'd be really weird to just go and watch a drift event and enjoy it and have a beer. Because they never get to do that. That is where
we have actually Drift Master staff also coming. They told me on the weekend, I'm coming with one of the judges is also coming. He said, I will take my son and we'll just come and watch and have a good time. And there's a few more of the Drift Master staff that told me that they were coming.
Because all they want to be is a fan again. Because they never get to do that anymore.
At the bottom of our hearts, we are drifting fans, right? So I definitely have the ability to enjoy every single auto drift event, and if it's something that feels really special, even better, right?
Yeah, it's like,
I think it's going to be awesome.
It's like industry night when you work in a restaurant. You always go to the bar on a Sunday night because that's when nobody else is out. It's all the industry people. I feel like this event's going to feel like that, where it's like you're going to have all these people who normally work and run and do all the other stuff with drift events all here to be like, okay, let's see what this crazy thing is all about. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's have a beer. Let's go for a swim, camp out, whatever. Like it's going to be
so much fun.
Yeah. Sick. Well, gentlemen, I very much appreciate the time on this, Dave. I'm glad we got to have you on here. I'm so excited to call your runs, and Marcel, I mean, I know you've got a bunch more work left to do,
but excited for it. So
yeah. If you're listening at home or watching,
everyone's pumping in the same direction. Like everyone wants it to be a blast, and I'm looking forward to it. And thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's nice.
Thank you for having the time.
It's funny. I always say it's funny to talk publicly to people that I like talking to privately as well. So it's fun.
Yeah.
It's
Same combo.
never
Well, if
a
you are
bad
sitting
time.
here,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think there's a lot less swearing than usually in the conversations the three of us have, but it's okay.
you're not wrong on that one. Well, if you are listening or watching at home and you're on the fence about it, this is the time to get your tickets. Lots of cool stuff, obviously, in the works. Please make sure that you're following and subscribing because there's more updates coming. We'll be having some more conversations about the judging and all the big changes there, track layout, and a lot of the cool stuff that's going to be happening between drivers and fan interaction. So lots more to talk about. So please stay updated and grab your tickets because it's getting close. What are we? 4 weeks
close.
out? 5 weeks
I
out?
don't want to think about it. I have to work my anxiety away. I can tell you that. So every time I'm getting peaceful, my mind is going crazy. So I'm like, okay, next task. I need to. It's the only way right now.
I'm just gonna go next door and look at the last time my Supra is gonna be in one piece. So I'm just gonna enjoy that.
Do
for the
that,
next
yes.
couple of
Take
weeks.
good pictures.
Perfect. Well, I'm gonna book my flight and see how I can get everything into one bag. So thanks again, gentlemen. And
Exactly.
Drift Island, the Iron Drift King podcast, hosted by Marcel Uhlig and Jacob Gettins.